So what you just heard was a track compiled using the VST plugin by Cherry Audio called SIne. So what I'm going to do is go into some of the presets so you can hear them, and then we'll talk more intimately about this VST synth. So I'm starting off with the pads. Kind of hear one of the things that kind of bugs me out. Like, this thing is a little CPU intensive, I will say that, but the sound quality of this is extremely good. You know, that's the sacrifice with, you know, either you're gonna build a DSP that will be CPU friendly, but it won't be so accurate, I guess. But in a hindsight to that, it does sound great. CPU usage is whew. Go ahead and check out some ARPs, because the ARPs are pretty interesting, as you saw from or heard from the intro track. Yeah. Let's go to keys. Let's hear some of those. Actually, let's go to bells, because, you know, I'm a bell guy. Ooh. Man, boy, this could make some mean 90s style R&B, you know? As these chords are pretty much church chords. Hey. What else we got? I know people want to hear some of the basses here, so let's go ahead and get into that. The basses are pretty decent. Over 700 presets, so you get a lot for... Let's get... All right, that's that bass. Got a little bit of aggro stuff there for, you know, different genres, drum and bass and stuff. Basic functionality is pretty simple and sweet if we're talking about like the top functions. You have your preset selection. You can make a new preset by hitting new. You can select and save and put it in a category and make keywords for it. And then you have the undo and redo. You have a slew, about 700 presets. So it's a whole bunch for right now for its introductory price of $39.95, I believe. Well, so about $40. And I think it will go up to like 50, 60. Don't quote me on that, but their plugins are very cheap. And then you have different, you know, categories that you can go through. You can also do some basic adjustments to your settings and to the interface, and make sure that you can select those things too as well. And you can resize it, make it look like a plugin from the early 2000s with this tiny UI. or you can go more modern, and it doesn't really lose any like quality in terms of that. There's your MIDI right here where you can MIDI learn, MIDI panic, and QWERTY keyboard controls and oversampling, which I don't think this needs that because this thing is beautiful. It sounds great. And speaking of which, that comes with a caveat. But I think that the caveat is worth it as far as the DSP. They made sure that it didn't sound like trash. Looking at the core part of the UI, you can see that it clearly has 4 oscillators which you can play with. So everything from right here has the same parameters. So let's start with the top part where you can change these sine waves, because it is called sines, and people might think you can only work with sine waves, and that's not true. You can change the timbre, shape, wavefold, and it will yield different things, drive, and so forth, and adding modulation. And you have LFOs, which you can assign for your modulation as well, which it has sine, triangle, sawtooth, ramp, square, and random. So you got a good choice of modulation from there. And you also have envelope sections as well, where you have the filter envelope, amplitude envelope, where you can control if you want like slower sounding pads, or just like straight up plucks if you want. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop the sustain. You have this area right here where you have some arpeggiation. So turning it on, and you can control up, down, key order, random, the rate, pattern, range, and so forth. Now, I'm not doing a great job of making something cool, but one thing I would like to talk about is that reverb, which I think the DSP on this is a wee bit wild, but for the sacrifice for sound quality, it is pretty decent. You have the delay, all sounding good. Stereo, let's go ping pong so you can hear it in your left and right headphones or studio monitors. Distortion. And it gets wild too. Yeah. And I just want to let it ring out there so you can see it. And of course, if you have a keyboard, like a MIDI keyboard, there's modulation, pitch. With all things considered, you will have to map your modulation pretty decent, pretty damn decent. Speaking of mapping stuff, you have an LFO right here. You see the modulation wheel and all that, but you can map more stuff like LFO 1 to maybe perhaps like a keyboard part or the signal and so forth. Like you can pretty much do your modulation and then assign it to a source. Choose a destination. You have the rate, frequency, and so forth. So you can change it all in the different oscillators and add it to like your reverb and stuff like that. Pros and cons. So the first thing I will say as far as a pro, the price point under $40 right now at an introductory price, that's very good. And none of their plugins are over $100 or even close to $100. So that's one thing I will say I like about Cherry Audio. The other thing, as far as a pro, the sound design is extremely good. I started off this video with a hip hop beat because my audience is more of a hip hop audience. But other than that, if I was to do a house track or any other genre, all those sounds would fit perfectly, like a glove. Con, yeah. So the DSP code is pretty heavy. Like, it's CPU intensive on my laptop. I know my laptop is about 2 years old now, but you know, I don't think a plugin should be that CPU intensive. Solution, you should always freeze your tracks, and you could do that in any DAW of choice. It doesn't matter which one that you use. I would freeze the MIDI tracks, make it into audio, boom, and you got a good plugin that you can work with and continue to work with there. So I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about Cherry Audio as a company? I think they're a fantastic company, and it's an honor to do a review on them, but I definitely want to hear from you guys.